Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Other Israel Film Festival. My name is Isaac Zablocki. I'm Director of Film Programs at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan and of the Other Israel Film Festival. We're excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us for this fabulous conversation. Tonight's film that we will be discussing is A Common Goal, and we're excited to have here the filmmakers. And first of all, I want to actually tell you about what else is coming up this evening. Mayor is the next conversation we have at 7 p.m. So please join us for that. That one is being released this week in New York in Film Forum. So we did that in partnership with them, and we're hosting the conversation tonight. And we're excited to see there. It's about the mayor of Ramallah, and it's a fascinating film. We also have tomorrow the film Ma'abarot at 3 p.m. We're doing the conversation, and at 5 p.m. the film Objector, along with a short film Image of Victory. Those conversations we'll be having together, relating to topics of the military and the IDF. 2 more days of Other Israel after that. The film One More Jump about parkour artists in Gaza, and then closing night Laila and Haifa. Please be sure to see everything. It's weird, like, there's no real order, but those are our conversations. We love it when you join us live, so please be a part of the conversation. If you have questions, please put them in the chat, and then we, when we get to the question and answer part of this conversation, we can open up your mics and let you ask these questions live. So that way you could be a part of it. Please keep your cameras on. We love seeing you. We love feeling that there's a sense of community here. And we hope you're enjoying all these films and all these conversations. Please do remember to wear your shirts. At this point, I would like to give a huge thank you to our partners that really are doing the work on a daily basis, on the ground and year round. And for this film specifically, for A Common Goal, I want to thank one of really our closest and founding partners, the Interagency Task Force on Israeli Arab issues. And we asked them to actually moderate this conversation because we thought there is a really good connection here. In many ways, I'll just say that I think this film goes to the core of what Other Israel is all about and gives a really good example. And it's fascinating to see how these themes have changed over the 14 years of this festival, and how they've grown and changed. And Israel has changed a lot. And how we're to compare, we've had soccer films throughout the years in different ways that talked about Arab relationships with Jewish players and fans, and how that all plays out in Israel. And really, I think since year one, if not two, it has been a common theme, but it's also been evolving throughout the years. And I think this film is a great example of that evolution. So it gives me great pleasure to hand things over to Erica Schaps, who is the Program and Resources Manager at the Interagency Task Force. Erica, I hand things over to you. I will remind the audience, please, all questions and all use of the chat should be respectful, because respectful conversation and hearing one another is the most important thing here. Thank you all. Erica, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Isaac. It's great to be here with all of you this evening. As was mentioned, I am the program manager at the Interagency Task Force on Israeli Arab issues. We're really happy to be co-sponsoring this event. In this festival, we convene more than 100 North American Jewish organizations committed to learning and educating about Arab citizens of Israel and Jewish-Arab relations. So, of course, this film was a really natural fit for our work in this partnership we've had over the years. I'm really happy to be joined by Shai and Shuki, who stayed up late to be here with us tonight for the North American debut of this film. Shuki was the director of A Common Goal. For the past 20 years, he's been directing and filming many TV shows and documentary projects for all broadcast stations in Israel, including some of the most interesting and challenging documentaries to have come out of Israel in recent years. Shai is the screenwriter. He's edited and wrote many documentaries, including Ma'abarot, which was just mentioned and is going to be shown tomorrow. He's also a playwright and has been a cultural journalist for over 2 decades. So before I jump into asking some questions, I thought I'd share a few updates, as the world of football and politics is always evolving, even during the time of pandemic. So many of the players have switched teams in their professional life since the film started. Biram, who is one of the players who is featured, is now back in Israel, playing for Bnei Sachin, which is the most prestigious and successful of the teams representing Arab communities in Israel. A really interesting dynamic that's been in the news is Dia Saba, who is an Arab player from the national team. He wasn't featured, but we saw him a bit, is now the first Israeli player to be playing in the UAE League. This happened just following the normalization agreement between Israel and the UAE. And another dynamic related to the UAE, further showing how football and politics continue to intersect, is just today, really a few hours ago, a deal was finalized where a member of the UAE royal family has bought 50% share of Beitar Yerushalayim, which is the Jerusalem soccer team that was shown in the movie for having a particularly vocal and racist fan base, and for being the one team in Israel to never have had an Arab player, is now owned by someone from the UAE royal family. So as I said, this landscape is always evolving, and we continue to see the interesting ways in which politics and sports intersect, particularly in the Israeli context. So to start with questions, I wanted to ask Shai and Shuki. As I mentioned, this is the debut in the US, but the film has been out for a bit. Can you tell us a bit about what the response has been like to the film within Israel and other places in the world?
I can tell you about the response in Israel. I don't know a lot about other places in the world. Actually, I know a little bit about the Arab world. Yeah, we know. So in Israel, we had quite good response. I think the most interesting thing is the responses that players got. The players, some of them were not really sure, but they were a little bit afraid when the movie came out. They were not sure about whether they liked it or they don't. And they got a lot of response in social media, especially from fans throughout Israel, and that told them that now they can understand what's going on, how they feel, and they sent me screen photos of a lot of comments that they got from a lot of fans, and it was quite exciting. Actually, it was very nice.
The film was also broadcasted by YouTube only to Arab countries such as Syria, Iraq, even Iran, and that gave us the opportunity to read comments. We saw hundreds of comments. Let's say that 80 or 90% of them were hostile, but we really enjoyed to read the 10%. The people that said, here's a real democracy, or we have to think again about Israel, stuff like this, which was interesting.
Actually, I think when we did the movie, it sounds like a cliche, but I really think so, that if an Arab child anywhere around the world, I don't know, will see the movie and will see a Muslim Israeli player plays for the Israeli national team, scores a goal, prays on the field in Haifa in Israel, and the crowd is cheering, I don't know, I think only good can come out of this. I saw, Shai, you said 100,000, I think there was something like 500,000 response that I saw in social media from Arab countries about the movie.
I stopped after hundreds.
Yes. And that's it. Actually, it was quite exciting to see that people around the Arab world watch the movie.
So you talked a little bit about the response from the players when the movie first came out. When you started on this project, how did you gain their trust as Jewish Israeli filmmakers making this? And I'm wondering if any of the players shared with you why they decided to participate and give you as much access as they did.
Actually, it's a combination, because it started out really good, because they were the three players that I wanted in the movie. They were the three first players that I connected with them. All of them agreed. all of them agreed. It took some time. It took a month or two of talking and trying to convince them, but they all agreed. I think they understood the importance of a film like this. I was not sure that they really understood all the way how deep we want to go in, because they are stars. They are stars in Israel, they are stars in Europe in the teams that they play for. And they are used to talking to journalists since they were 16 or 17, I think, something like this, on a daily basis. And they are used to, I think, mainly saying nothing when they talk to journalists. Speaking in cliches, don't saying too much, not pressing any hard points or open wounds or something like this. As one of the players, Biram, says in the movie, they are walking between the drops. And so it was quite challenging. And I think slowly they understood what we wanted from them. It was quite hard. It was something like we filmed for a year, the movie. We are in Israel, all the players plays in Europe at that time. So the communication was quite hard, a lot of telephone talks, a lot of WhatsApp. And eventually I think that they understood what we want from them. They understood that the film is important. And I think all of them understand that they have double representation in the Israeli national soccer team. They represent Israel, but they also represent the Arab Israelis. And they want their voice to be heard.
Yeah, but the problem is that many times their direct interest is not to say really what they think, or all what they think. Because they are, first of all, professional football players, and almost everything that they will say about this topic will annoy one of the sides, and that's why they are very used to say nothing, which was a big challenge for us.
I'm hearing both of you talk about this double representation and needing to sort of toe the line between the different audiences and the communities they represent. And it reminded me of what Bayram said towards the end of the film, is Arab players in Israel, they're always in the middle and they always get the heat. That line really stuck with me. And I can't ask you to speak on behalf of the players, but I was wondering, from your experience making the film and communicating with them, if you think this is just relevant to the football field, or if this is more of a broader statement about the place of Arab citizens in Israeli society.
Of course, broader. Yeah. Go on.
I'll start. Okay, so I think everything connected to this film is not only about soccer. All we talk about in this film, soccer is only a mirror to understand the Arab Israeli society in Israel. The problems that the players are facing are the same problems that any Israeli Arab is facing. In these are problems of identity. And of a double identity, because a lot of Israelis, a lot of Jews will say, yes, they are double agents. And they are not totally loyal to Israel, not just in soccer means, but in wider means. And actually you can understand this, because they have a double identity. They are Arabs, they are Palestinians, and they are Israelis. And they try to mingle between these two identities, again, as a football players and as any other Israeli Arab citizen. And the part of the film that you talked about, the part when Biram is talking about the Arab media, that refers them as traitors, actually as traitors. When Biram goes in the Premier League, in the English Premier League, and plays, and the Arab, in the Arab networks, they call him the Zionist player. That doesn't even say his name. We found articles in Arab websites. One, I think I remember at least one of them that says Munas Dabur is like an Israeli soldier. He's as bad as an Israeli soldier.
No, there was a really crazy story about Munas Dabur. There was a rumor. a false rumor that he's going to play for Liverpool Football Club. And in Liverpool plays Mohamed Salah, the Egyptian star. And the Egyptian media demanded Mohamed Salah to leave Liverpool if the Zionist pig, Munas Dabur, will join Liverpool.
Yeah, so I think, you can understand from this that they are torn between these two identities, and nothing they will do will satisfy each of the parts. Like the Arab world would always be mad of them, and the Jewish Israelis will always be mad of them. So it's a hard place to be in, and I think it refers to all Arab Israeli societies. And our players, they are rich and famous, yeah, they have good life. You saw in the movie, they are driving Porsche, they have good houses. But still, you think if such a rich and successful Israeli Arab is facing these problems, what about all the others?
Yeah, what we felt all through the movie, all through the shootings, is the wish to belong. Not only the football players, most of the Arabs that we met during the shooting want to feel a part of the thing that's called Israel. And maybe what has started with football will go on in other terms of life, especially politics. And we start to feel it now. The Arabs argue between themselves not to go in one party in the next elections. And some of them want to mix in the political game. So maybe the football is the first step.
So I'll just add a little bit there for some context. Is some people may be following the news, there may or may not most likely be elections in Israel in the next number of months.
Yeah.
And the joint list, the main party, which is a conglomerate of smaller parties representing Arab citizens of Israel, has had more internal dynamics that have been visible about how much they want to be working with the governing party to get things done, or how much they want to stand in opposition to the Netanyahu administration. And those tensions are being visible in mainstream Israeli media in ways that they haven't been in recent years. So I think that's what some of we're talking about in terms of the questions of political inclusion and what it means to belong in Israel and what that looks like in different.
The idea of an Arab minister in the Israeli government is not so crazy anymore. Let's say.
You had mentioned to me when we met that you had been interested in making a film exploring Arab society in Israel, and football was the idea that stuck. Why do you think that is? Why do you think sports culture is such a successful way of exploring some of these bigger political and social dynamics?
All the things I tried, most of the Israeli Jews don't want to see movies about Arabs in general and Israeli Arabs specifically, because they know that they will start complaining, and maybe our conscience will have to be active. But when you put it in a sexier outfit like football, and you show stars and you show money, it is easier to get it.
Actually, I'm working with this idea in my mind for, I think, 7 or 8 years, something like that. I've tried it started for me in the young Israeli team, like 7 or 8 years ago in the young Israeli team, the team until the age of 21, there was an Arab majority. And then I thought, wow, this could be an amazing movie. And I tried to sell it, and nobody wanted it. And then this team came. I remember I called Shai. You remember they called you, and I told you, and you said, okay, this is the time now when there's so many Arabs in the national team, when it's big, when media is all around us. This is the time to make this movie, and it happened.
It's a small miracle, I have to say. It's not common.
Yeah.
What's a small miracle?
to get the budget to do a film about Arabs in Israel, not common.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Do you think that had the team been more successful and gone further in the tournament, that would have made even more of a difference in terms of the visibility of football and dynamics of belonging and identity in Israel, or was just the symbolism of the team significant?
Sports is about success. I think absolutely yes, because you know, if the team is successful, so you get more publicity, you get more media, you get more people talking about you. So definitely yes. It's a pity that they didn't. We wanted a happier end for the movie, but we knew from the start that
there's no way they will succeed.
Yeah,
but it's not so simple, you know. The French national team football won in '98 the Mondial, and they had mixed team of old French and many Muslims. And then they talk about it, that this victory will unite France. And as we see, it didn't.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to shift gears a little bit. Watching the film as an American, particularly at the beginning when conversations came up about the national anthem and whether or not the players felt comfortable saying the national anthem, my mind quickly went to the United States, where there's been a movement where some players have been kneeling during the national anthem in solidarity with the movement for Black lives, and it's generated a lot of controversy and opinions here. I'm wondering if that came up at all in your conversation with the players, and if you see these movements is connected to each other, or if these are totally separate concepts in very different contexts.
I don't really know. The thing in America, the kneeling is a protest. I don't think the Arab players don't sing the Israeli anthem because they want to protest. They don't sing it because it's impossible for a Muslim to sing that he has a Jewish soul. Sounds quite reasonable for me. Even with all other more problems with the anthem, except this special line, but this special line kills it. You know, it just does it an impossible mission. So I don't know, actually, Shai. I don't know what you think. I didn't thought about it.
It's connected only in the way that the national anthem is a huge symbol.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can you say more about that? Like, what do you think why was that symbol such a flashpoint for, you know, Jewish Israelis who felt like critiquing the players, and why do you think that came up as such a visceral moment of tension?
I think first of all, as a football fan, you want to see your team together. You want to see them very passionate. There's something very nationalist about football, even not only in the national teams, but also in all kinds of teams. You want to see your team together. You want to see them singing. I remember there was, I think, Championship of Africa. Algeria won the Championship of Africa. I was looking at the Algerian team. They stood all hugged together and sang passionately the anthem. I said, I understand why people want to see their players singing. I really understand it. It's something about sport. It's something about soccer. It's something that as a fan you want to see. But it's also impossible in Israel. It's impossible maybe in other places, but in Israel especially. And this thing, the anthem is like, I'm trying to find the words in English, but it's like the end of the tip of the whole of everything. It's like the wound, because everything goes there. Because it's nationalist, because it's the country symbol, and they are not, like Jewish think that they are not part of the country. They are not sure that they are not part of the country. Arab states and Arab world doesn't want to see them play for the country. So everything goes to this. Everything goes to the anthem. This is like the most nationalist thing in
I think it was a big deal because it's the bare truth in 3 minutes.
yeah.
I mean, it's all the story of Israel. The anthem is Jewish. It talks about the Jews, and half of the team are Muslims, and it's not their song. It's very simple and very complicated in the same.
And it sounds like it's very starkly visible. Like it puts
Yeah.
all the issues on display in a very
Actually, it's
visible
the
moment.
truth in the face. You know, it's just in your face. This is the story. Yeah. It's in Jewish country with 20% not Jewish in it, that they have a big problem feeling part of the country.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have so much more I can ask, and we're really getting into some of these deep questions of identity and belonging, and how, you know, football connects to these broader questions about how Arab citizens of Israel feel about their role in Israel and in the region. But I'm seeing we're starting to get some questions from the audience, and I want to make sure all of you have time to ask. So we're going to turn over and take some audience questions, and I encourage those of you who haven't yet and still have things to ask to put them in the chat, and we'll be taking questions from there.
Thank you. This is really an exciting conversation. Thank you, Erica. This is you have some really great questions, and you guys have been handling them very well. We have a question from Catherine. I want to start with her. Catherine, you're on the line.
We can't hear you.
Yes. All right. Hi. I really loved the film, but I was surprised there weren't more. We didn't hear more from the Jewish players about the issues that you raised in the film, and I'm wondering the reason for that.
The truth, I'm not sure they have something very interesting to say. They will talk.
Some of them.
Hmm?
We asked some of them, and we noticed that they don't have.
We heard a lot of cliches.
Yeah.
And a lot of players running out from the truth. No, nobody is really facing this. It's very easy for them not to deal with this. Although we know that they had in the past, they had some problems in these fields, and sometimes it goes out, but we didn't hear anything very interesting or special from the Jewish players. We have Tomer Hamed in the movie, which is really a good friend of Iran. So we use this friendship, but we didn't find anything very interesting in other places.
No.
Thank you. Let me take a question now from Phyllis. Phyllis, you're on the air.
Hi, I enjoyed the film, not being a soccer fan, but watching over the years the Arab players. And I'm wondering over the years, I understand now what's going on in Israel with something like the nation state law, nothing could change. But in the past, were there any other movements to try to change the language to say something like Israeli soul versus Jewish soul so more people could feel comfortable with it? Or was there always a feeling that it's a slippery slope? You change the anthem, then you want to change the flag, then you change whatever. When does it end?
There are suggestions all the time of changing the anthem. I don't think that they have any real chance because, as you said, it's a slippery slope. It's not only the anthem. The Arab players are playing for the team with a blue and white shirt, and they had the symbol of the menorah on their heart, on their chest, and they have to kiss it after they score a goal. Everything is so symbolic and it's so Jewish.
I think I know in the past there was some suggestions to change the anthem, but nobody really took it seriously. I don't think it was just, so some people try to offer all kinds of different things, but it wasn't a real discussion in Israel about this topic. Unfortunately, I must say that we're even moving backwards in this area because we have the, I don't know, Shahar called the national law, Chok HaLeom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The national law, okay, which defines Israel as a Jewish country. for Jewish people, and the players also talk about it in the movie, and there was a very big argument in Israel about this law, but it passed, and now it's a law in Israel that the country is Jewish, that the language is Hebrew, that I don't remember all what's in it.
They're forcing Arabs to raise the Israel flags everywhere in Arab villages, for example.
Schools.
I had a quick question, if I may. The film, one of the great things about the film is that it really can reach an audience that is not your average. Let's say, I know the film played at a documentary film festival. There you're getting the choir, the people who are, I think a lot of the people in this room too, who kind of are on this side already, don't need to be convinced. But of course, having a movie made about, some of the biggest soccer stars in Israel can also reach, I'll call them the non-converters, and help change perceptions within the soccer fans who are possibly leaning more to the right. Couldn't put it in any better way. Have you felt that this movie has had that impact in changing perceptions in that way?
We can only hope. I don't want to take any credit.
I can say me and Shuki are soccer friends for many years. Shuki even better than me. Is every Shabbat is in the bench before the Corona.
With my children, with the family.
Yeah, and I can say that in the past, as I see it at least, in the past 10 years, things are going much better in the terms of the racist crowd in Israel of football.
I can tell you the truth. We went to the crowd in the team in the games. We tried to find the racist. We actually went and asked hard questions. We didn't find them. Not really. Not between the fans of the national team. Almost everyone, every fan in the field that we asked them about the Arabs in the national team, they said yes, there's no problem, they're part of us. When we ask about the anthem, some say, yeah, we would rather them to sing the anthem. Yeah. It's not good that they don't sing the anthem, but we didn't really find any racist fans. You can find them cool. If you go to the league, you will find them. But on the national team, we looked for, we didn't find it.
It's not cool to say it.
As I told you before, I actually used to live right next to the soccer stadium in Tel Aviv, so I have some more exposure to this than I think a lot of the audience. But within the league in Israel, like you were distinguishing between the national team and like the Israeli soccer league, what do you mean by you can find people who are saying racist slogans more within the league, and how that's changed? Can you share a little bit more detail of that for people who might have less familiarity?
There are Arab players in all Israeli football soccer teams except Betar Jerusalem, which was bought 2 hours ago by Arab
Sheikh.
Okay, so you can find Arab players in all Israeli teams, and because you can find Arab players in all Israeli teams, so it only makes sense that the racism will drop down, because you can hear in Israeli football stadiums, especially in Jerusalem, you can hear the call "Death to Arabs." If you will listen closely, you will hear it. But if there's an Arab player on your team, so you cannot sing it, you cannot scream it, even if you are a racist. Okay, and there are players in all of the team, Arab players. So I think everything really is getting really better.
No, there are teams that are regarded more Arab-friendly, let's say, in Israel. The Haifa teams, because Haifa is a mixed town, or Apol Tel Aviv, which is regarded the left-right supporters. But again, a part of Beitar, you almost don't hear cause against Arabs.
Somebody mentioned in the chat the film Forever Pure by Maya Zinstein. That is about Beitar. Maya's new film is the film Till Kingdom Come that we had a conversation with her here on Saturday night. She's a fan of your film. We spoke to her about it today. So you could check that film out after Other Israel's over.
Okay.
And
You want to see the other side.
yeah, see the Beitar fans.
The Beitar fans.
We have a question from Dina. So we could open her mic. Dina, you're on the air.
Hi, sorry, I just walked in. Hi, great topic, of course, and great topic to be brought out this way. I'm curious whether I'm curious about the stereotypes and the realities about the different Eidot, the different ethnic groups within Israeli society, whether it's Ashkenazi, Mizrahi, Ethiopi, etc. And first of all, what are the general attitudes towards soccer? Do you find fans more or less passionate one group or the other? And also about if you found any differences, whether stereotypes or realities, towards this whole issue of Palestinian and Israeli players. I also wanted to ask you about gender issues, but let's start off with this. Thanks.
What we found out about our relationship between the Arab participant was gaps in mentality, I would call it. Mostly matters of trust, but you can plan a whole day of filming, even abroad. We went to Spain to shoot Munas Dabur, and then he disappears. And after he disappears, he has he doesn't feel uncomfortable with this. So the time is different. I don't think that there's any relevance in this film to Ashkenazi and Sfaradi. Maybe you think different?
No, but I think something nice. I don't know, it doesn't relate it especially to this team, but most of football players are Mizrahim in Israel. Not totally, but I think most of them. Shai, I'm right, probably. And the music that you will hear on the music that players will hear will be Mizrahit, will be Mizrahit music, okay? And this connects the Arab players with the Jewish players, with the Mizrahim Jewish players, because they like the same music. So when we go to, there is a part in the movie when we see Biram Kial driving in his car and singing a song in Arab. But 5 minutes, we filmed and we used the part that he sings in Arab, but 5 minutes before that he was singing Eyal Golan, Israeli singer, which is a Mizrahi singer. So I think maybe in this relevant, maybe they find like a topic that connects them together, but I don't really find like Shai says, in this movie, we don't really...
Football all over the world and in Israel is a way of social mobility. Let's say that that people that come from lower parts of the society use football to get better or get richer or get more successful. So in Israeli football, you see in the 50s and in the 60s, most of the players were Ashkenazis. And then it changed to Mizrahim. And now come the Arabs. And now there is even a new level of immigrants from Ethiopia, which start to be successful football players. It's classic.
And I'll just add, not knowing what everyone in the audience knows with terminology, that Mizrahim refers to Jewish Israelis of North African and Middle East descent. Yeah, so I think just the last thing I'll add, following up on Dina's question, where I think some of what she was getting at too was differences within the fan bases and how the fan bases relate to there being Arab players on the Israeli national team, whether that's different. I'll even make it broader among age, among geography in Israel we know about Jerusalem, and also questions about gender, I think is great. We didn't, the main time we saw women in the movie were the spouses of the players and their mothers, and wondering how sort of gender dynamics come into the culture of football fandom in Israel, and some of the dynamics it brings out around race and belonging.
I think, first of all, if you would look at the crowd, you would see a lot of women in the crowd, which was not, I think if you go back 10 or 20 years ago, you would see mostly men in the crowd. So I think, and I go a lot to soccer games in Israel, I think maybe 20, 30% of the crowd is women. I take my daughter every week to watch a game. So in gender meanings, I think that's the thing. It's a men's sport, soccer, and women's soccer is not so successful all around the world, and in Israel, I think even not at all.
In the States, yes. In Israel, no.
In the States, yes, actually, yeah. But in Israel, not really.
Let me take one last question from the audience. Shani, you have a question.
Sure, thanks. So I know that obviously you've spoken a lot about Palestinian identity being complex, often in the middle. And I know it's something that is always shifting in terms of public discourse, particularly the question of, do Arab or Palestinian citizens of Israel identify themselves as Palestinian? And I'm curious if you spoke with the players about their own identities, how their identities have shifted over time, and where they find themselves in that discourse. Do they consider themselves Palestinian?
We did, and they answered. They said that first of all, they see themselves as Palestinians. It was one of the more obvious things that they said. When you go deeper, they stop because, as we said before, it's dangerous for them. But all of them, not all of them, Bibras Natcho is not a Palestinian. Is a different story, is a Cherkessi. But Munas Dabur and Biram Kiel are Palestinians. They say it aloud and proudly.
I think, Biram, it happened a few years ago. It's not in the movie, but there was, he had an issue a few years ago. He was playing for, in Glasgow, in Celtic. And during the Tzuk Eitan war, I think in Gaza, one of the wars in Gaza, he published in social media a picture of him while he's playing, and in the background, you see the Palestinian flag in the crowd, quite small. It was a huge issue in Israel, okay? All sport channel, all media, everybody, and fans and everything. So, and this is only because someone saw behind him in the picture. I'm sure Biram did it. I'm sure he knew what he did when he published this picture in social media. He knew the Palestinian flag is behind him, but he learned to be very careful considering this. As I said before, walk between the drops, but they all consider themselves as Palestinians, but as Israelis also. This is the thing, the mixed identity.
Biram is a very proud Palestinian, and all the time it seems that in another minute he will say something very hard, but he knows how to stop. After he was beaten many times before, he took a journalist, he hired a journalist that works with him and helps him to say the right things.
Do you think this is a good thing?
For him, yes.
For him, yes. Yeah,
for his career,
for his career. Yeah, I don't know in wider perspective, but for his career as a football player, probably it is, of course.
I'm quite sure that the day after he will quit as a player, he will say much more. Maybe even will be a politician.
It's actually it's a nice story. Biram uncle is married to Israeli Jewish. Okay, now when we did the movie, I went to the village to his family, to his parents, and I took pictures. We needed pictures of him as a young boy, and we took some pictures. And because his uncle lives closer to me, when I gave back the picture, I asked him if I can give it back to his uncle. So I went to give it back to his uncle, and we talked a little bit. And then the first thing he told me, he's a coward. He didn't speak all the way. He should have said more. So, yeah. I think they don't say all of what they really think.
Fascinating. It's interesting also in terms of just like how players are managing that here in the United States as well. And there's definitely an interesting dichotomy. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying in the States, I think there's a big, it changes now. Like in the NBA, as far as I can see, players say their political views, no? That they are less afraid.
More than before, but still.
Yeah. Let me take one last question, really this time, from Diana Heller. Diana, you're on the line.
Well, these players certainly get it from both sides, which is very disturbing, I thought. But one thing that just caught my attention, because I happen to be English, even though I live in New York, was the comment, I think, by Mo Farah, apparently, that the Circassian player, the player for the Brighton and Hove team made, that, and I didn't catch it properly, but it seemed a very damning and an awful thing for a player of Mo Farah's status to say, that it seemed like he was saying that he was a traitor to every possible situation. And that really shook me for some reason, despite everything else in the film. And I was wondering, he happened to say, the player, that his experience in the UK on the whole wasn't so bad, that bad. But I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about that kind of situation and what he represents, how he represents Israel in any sense at all in the sports world, in Europe, in the UK, for instance. It's a bit complicated, I'm sorry, but it really just struck me very forcefully that he could be criticized by a person with a very, very high profile in the UK.
You mean Salah?
I guess so. But no, Mo Farah, there was I thought I heard him, maybe I got it wrong. He said that Mo Farah, who is probably the best known track athlete in the UK.
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't know? Okay.
I don't.
All right. That criticized him as being a traitor to the cause of non-white players. That really struck me very hard. Okay.
We'll have to review it. Find us the line. Folks, we want to give an opportunity for you guys to talk a little bit more. We don't get to see each other anymore. We don't get to have a glass of wine after the screenings. So what we're going to do now is break out into breakout sessions and allow you to meet some of your neighbors from across the country, from across the world sometimes, and talk a little bit about the film, literally for 5 minutes. We're going to then call you back in. Please do not speak. I say this each time. Don't speak for more than a minute as to not cannibalize the conversation. But I leave you always with the question of what struck you from this film or from this conversation and why. And please share that and introduce yourselves to your fellow film viewers. And then, of course, at 7 o'clock, we have the conversation for Mayor. Join us for that. And we'll meet back up here after the conversation just to say goodnight. But a big, big thank you to Shuki and Shai, and a huge thank you to Erica for leading this conversation, and of course to our partners who make this all possible. And I do urge you to check out all of our partners. In this case, of course, the Interagency Task Force on Israeli Arab issues. And please also check out all of the work from NIF, who's one of our lead partners on this. And off you go to breakout sessions. See you soon. Folks, thank you for joining. Thank you for being a part. Shai and Shuki, thank you once again. Erica, thank you. This has been a fascinating conversation and a fabulous film. Please tell your friends there's only a week of this Other Israel Film Festival to see these films and to check them out. And I think it's an extremely relevant film and also a nice entry point into this whole topic of Arab-Jewish relations. So please check that out and check, of course, all of our partners' work. And we look forward to seeing you at other conversations here till Thursday night. Have a good night, and we'll be back at 7.